central vac hose here, where the hose has become unraveled near the end. Now oftentimes this is a good sign that you just need to replace the hose, but in fact this can be fixed if you're up to the challenge. I should clarify, this can be fixed if you have a Plastiflex hose that looks like this, either with a gas pump or a pistol grip. Some of the older wire reinforced hoses could not be fixed in this manner because the end was molded onto the hose, and in that case the hose needs to be replaced. But if you've got an older wire reinforced hose, then I recommend replacing it even if it's not broken. Okay, so we have the end apart. And now we have the contact ring assembly, so we're going to take these off. Being careful not to smash them and nearly break them like I just almost did. So this reveals your wire ends coming out of the hose with these little terminals crimped on them. What all those terminals are doing is just making contact against these brush rings. So then these halves came off. Now this little end piece comes out. And this is glued in, and we're going to re-glue it in. So you'll see, examining the construction here, this hose has a 4-spiral design. Some of them have a 3-spiral design, where you have your 2 power wires and then 2 jacketed low voltage conductors, teeny little conductors inside of a third one. But in this case you have unjacketed low voltage conductors, each with their own spiral path. So what we're going to do is just make this look like this. And that's the tricky bit. So we're going to use a fresh sharp-bladed utility knife. And let's see. So in the past I've gone through and I've traced around to see, okay, which one's going to be yellow and which one's going to be white. And I don't usually bother with that anymore. Let's just start a couple inches down. Oh, please make sure the hose is unplugged before you start to do this. What am I doing here? We need the end of the hose to be reasonably flat, and because I took the short bus when I was in school, it's taking me a couple of minutes to remember how to do this. Oh, that one's no good. Focusing on talking instead of focusing on what I'm doing. Okay, so we now have a nice end, but we need the wires to come out in the middle of the hose. And so that's what we're going to do. Now you can see in the end, this is a yellow one. And the yellow comes out. We're going to do that one. Okay, so we're carefully slicing. Whoops. Okay. We've just taken a little chunk out. And now we're going to take some needle nose pliers and hook under the wire and pull out a loop of it. You can see I've skinned it a little bit. I was trying not to do that, but this is a brand new razor blade and we kind of need to use a brand new one. Let's see. So at the Plastiflex factory, there's a big expensive machine, I'm assuming, that does this all in 10 seconds or whatever. And this is rather fiddly work. And this was never a repair that I believe the manufacturer anticipated being made, but you know, when it's between this and waiting a week for a new hose or whatever, or if you're, I mean, generally by the time this happens, this shouldn't really happen before the whole hose is kind of beat up and filthy and ready to be replaced. But in this case, this is kind of a premature failure. The rest of this hose is in really good shape. And so it's kind of a shame to throw this away. I don't mind making this repair. Plastiflex has gone through several different versions of hose materials. And some are more prone to this than others. They've been on a quest to make the thing as lightweight and flexible as possible, and this is the kind of what we have to deal with. I'm gluing this end piece back in now. I'm using Plyo Bond. I put that shit on everything. Okay, we're going to go like that, and then put the lid back on right away because that's how these cans go bad and they're not getting any cheaper. Alright. Oh, and I see what they did. This, I now realize, actually has to come down and come out over here. Ding dong. Fries are done. Yeah, I actually probably should be using a slightly lighter hand with the utility knife because I'm going all the way through the hose. But okay, now that you've got the wires exposed, the rest of it is just lining things up. And we want your two power wires to come out first, and then we want these two to come out. That's good. You could also, you know what? Just for good luck. I either read once or I figured out once that in a 30-foot hose is over 300 feet of wire. And I don't know if that's 300 feet each conductor for a total of 1,200 feet, because it makes sense that, you know, in a foot, this would go around enough time to have, you know, 10 feet of wire in a foot of each conductor. Well, no, yeah, that's probably 300 feet of wire for all 4 conductors. But still, that's a lot of wire and a lot of resistance, electrical resistance. And the power head, it doesn't much matter, but I have seen on older systems where the relay was one of those big old beefy chunky relays, and the thing would not activate with a low voltage hose because of the added resistance of the wire. This is teeny little wire. It's only like 20, I don't know, 26 gauge, 28 gauge, something like that. Okay, so here's what we're doing now. We're reusing those little terminals. I have never had a failure with not soldering them. I like to solder, but I also like to get this done quickly. Alright, so our trick is to get this in here and get all this back together. So I'm going to cut these off now at around where we want them. Put our first brass band on. So if you look at where the wires fall, you know it's going to be brass, plastic, brass, plastic, brass, plastic, brass, plastic. So we're going to put just the one on where we've finished the termination there. And we need to get you out of there. Come on, get out of there. Yeah, and this, you can see that the hose can move a little bit on the end, and that's why I do think it's a nice idea to dab a little glue on the inside here, because when that sets, then it's not going to do that. Who dat, who dat, do that, do that. Okay, one more. And these, by the way, the little end piece can fall anywhere in this wider part of the channel. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so we're going to go a plastic. And then a brass right on top of it. And if things aren't in just perfect, well, even if things, I believe things are in just perfect in this case, but this is still quite tight to get on there. It's these rings that really hold the whole thing together. We're going to go a plastic, a brass, and then a plastic. And you can see this one wider plastic ring goes between the low voltage side of the circuit and the high voltage side. Whoops. Get down there, you. All right. I guess if you really wanted to try and do 110%, you would solder this, but first of all, I don't even know if a soldered connection would fit in here unless you did a really neat and tidy soldering job. And second of all, as I said, I have never ever seen the twisted together method fail. And I assume that, like most things in life, the solder fumes aren't terribly good for you. And I breathed in my share of that as a child, working in a sweatshop in Naperville, Illinois. All right, last one. Okay, that is finished. We now have also the gasket in the end, and I like to just give all this stuff a spray and wipe with your favorite libation, and then this gets set down in here. Ooh, okay. My end here has popped out of its little channel. I just reseated it. Fortunately, I didn't have to take the rings back off, but how I knew that that had happened was that when I tried to set this back in here, this was sticking out further and just wasn't going to go in. So now that, and we gently wiggle this in, seating it in the O-ring without displacing the O-ring, and another little good luck spritz in here. At some point, if you had too much of this liquid in here, you might have a little bit of current leakage, but I've never had that problem. Because yeah, wouldn't that be funny if the 120 bridged over to the 24 volt side of things? Oops, you need a circuit board. Okay, and that should be it. One other failure I see in these hoses, of course, there's always the older design, the pins would get rounded out and wallowed out, and then they would start to short out and burn, and then you replace the wiring harness, including the receptacle and the switch. But another thing that I've seen happen more recently is the system, the suction will turn on only in position 2, not in position 1. And when you're using a power brush, well, the power brush is making the noise. You can't really tell that the suction is on. So when your vacuum will work on carpeting but not on hard floors, for example, or it's spitting dirt out or whatever, check that. And obviously we can replace the wiring harness, but the other thing we can do that oftentimes will work is we can squirt a little bit of lubricant in there and work it back and forth. Again, this is really good to do with the thing disconnected, but oftentimes that will get those contacts freed up enough to work and be a reliable fix. But anyway, that's that. Bought them another few years. Thanks for watching.